Hey folks, Mega881000 here, and as promised, now this is the third pre-thoughts video about the third wave of the Shodo Digimon figure series, and at the beginning there will be a few more informations about Shodo Digimon Figure Wave 3 and about this topic. In case you missed the first video or the following ones about, I have linked all of them for you again in the description down below. As I mentioned shortly in the video about Shodo Digimon Wave 2 and in the update video, the third wave of Shodo Digimon figures has already been officially announced. Wave 1 is not even in the first hands or almost in hands. It also could be that some few people already got them in the meantime in their hands. But yeah. And they already launched the next update with the official colored promotion images for Shodo Digimon Figure Wave 3. Wave 3, as mentioned last and you could see for the whole time already yet, will include Pseudomon, Omegamon and Lilymon. These three figures of the third Shodo Digimon Wave will be available as a limited premium Bandai version again. Then you also have the stand base again for each Digimon figure with the respective associated, nicely printed on crest symbol. With something more special for Omegamon stand base, because as you can see they printed both crest symbols on it, which matches also very well for him. The three boxes will each packed in a special collector's box, including new illustrations of the three Digimon, of course again drawn by longtime Digimon designer Kenji Watanabe. However, as you can see, this time without a preview for the yearly rough version of the illustration, but Bandai already teased that the illustration of the third collector's box actually combines with the other two on a shelf to be able to create one massive image with the three artworks together. So it can be guessed that the artwork of the third box will again be designed to match the artwork of the collector's boxes of set 1 and 2. How you could also expected it. The pre-orders at Premium Bandai Japan are already open. This Premium Bandai version was again announced for 4,950 yen, which would be about circa 56 and 68 US dollars, which would be also about just under 40 euros. They also announced that they will be shipped in April 2021, and again that the pre-orders may close early if they hit certain numbers. In addition, each figure will come again with a piece of soda flavored gum. Above this image here, they also point out that the figures, not including Omegamon, completing the team lineup now as it was at the end of Adventure 01. The day after the pre-order information for the Bandai Premium version was published, they also launched the pre-order informations for the standard releases. They come as a sealed box or a case with 6 Shodo Digimon figures of Wave 3 at random for about roughly 50 US dollars, for example from Hobby Link Japan. By the way, I took all of this information from the With the Will forum again. And I would like to correct that for my pre-thoughts video about Shodo Digimon Wave 2, because it was still a bit unclear and I somehow didn't understand everything correctly, like I said in this video. But now it can be seen that in online shops the standard release will be actually handled exactly according to this principle I mentioned right before. But in this last pre-thoughts video I said they sell 3 figures of Wave 1 and 3 figures of Wave 2 in a box at random for about this 50 US dollars, because I understood this that way due the post in the forum. But please quickly forget what I said in that video, and it will be just like I mentioned it before. and it can be referred from this that the standard releases always following the same principle, namely 6 of the Wave 1 Shodo Digimon in a box at random for about $50, 6 of the Wave 2 Shodo Digimon in a box at random for about $50, and can you guess it? Yes, of course, 6 of the Wave 3 Shodo Digimon in a box at random for about $50. So that you can live the fun of collecting, selling and group trading to the fullest. I personally think that this system is actually a bit strange and also cumbersome if you want to get them all with the at random principle. But well, my hope for this is that there will be some eBay shops that will buy a bunch of these standard releases and then sell them single and overpriced. Yeah. For the people who only want a few of the Shodo Digimon figures, maybe. What I also kinda missing is what Bandai Candy announced at the time when the first Shodo Wave was announced, because they actually wanted to do the standard releases individually in their shops and sell each figure single for 950 yen, which would be about circa close to $9. With this type of release you would have also an advantage, because then you could certainly see which figure you exactly buy. The last time the single release option they posted also for Shodo Wave 2 in the With the Will forum. That's also why the two statements were so misleading. On one hand you had the standard release with 6 figures at random, and on the other hand the one with the single release by Bandai Candy. But this time they didn't post that in the forum again with the single releases. I mean that by Bandai Candy for Wave 3 anymore. They were really fast with getting out the informations and update of the next Shodo Digimon Wave 3. I really didn't thought that it would following this quickly and expected it so just in December. Well, why not? At least they fulfilled their promise this time already, in contrary to the unfulfilled promise they made back then for the Digivolving Spirits figure series. But due to the announcement after 4 years of a new Tamashii Nations Figure Arts Digimon figure, I think nothing is lost for the spirits. But I don't want to start with that again, so quickly back to the actual topic. That was also with the general informations, and now I will start immediately with my pre-thoughts about Shodo Digimon. The whole thing should at least of course again considered under the aspects of what a Shodo Digimon figure series should be and is, namely a simpler, more affordable figure series. They are basic action figures with a decent level of detail and posability, but minimal effort and added features to keep the cost reasonable. In addition, they are rather smaller figures, roughly 3.1 inches tall and 2.4 inches wide, excuse me please, which would be about just circa 787 centimeters tall and almost a bit over 6 centimeters wide. So they are not much bigger than the action feature Digimon action figures back then, which were 2.5 inches or 5 centimeters tall. Which for all these reasons cannot be compared with a figure series for adult collectors, I think, like in contrary the Bandai Tamashii Nations SH Figure Arts Digimon figure series is. Under all these aspects, Shodo Digimon looks pretty good, cute and adorable. From the product images, by the first look. At second look, however, you can notice the somewhat strange proportions of the arms and legs, which appear much too muscular and too bulky to the rest of the proportions of her other body parts due to the integrated joints. This is even more obvious here than on Shodo Angelomon and Holy Angelmon, because if you have Lilymon's original character design in your mind, she is and should be a very petite, graceful being, which the Shodo figure can't reflect very well, unfortunately. Due of these two massive proportions of the arms and legs, probably because of the small size, and in order to keep the cost as low as possible for these figures, it is not possible to do the joints a little more subtle and better adapted to the rest of the other proportions and body parts, and this generally applies to all of these Shodo Digimon figures. But from the facts just mentioned on Shodo Lilymon, this gets even more obvious, I think. What is very good on her, in contrary, I think, is the detailed paint job, and that all the important paint apps are surprisingly there. Of course, as far as you can tell this from the product images, because you can only see the figure from the front. I only noticed that they didn't paint her fingernails pink, but well, if they are not managed to paint larger hand claws on the others, for example, so it is totally okay that the paint apps for the fingernails are missing due for Lilymon's petite little fingers and for the small size and low price of the figure. I find it particularly impressive in this respect that the green glossy stripe on the upper top section of her eyes, which is typical for Lilymon's eyes, has been taken into account, which is actually amazing that they done this for such a small sized figure. Very nice is also that they molded the yellow flowers on her boots so accurate. But the proportions affect the generally good overall image of Lilymon quite very much, I think. This is also the opinion of several people in the With the Will forum, and someone even posted that the figure is much too muscular and too beefy for Lilymon and looks more like a Lilymon man. Well, okay. What also contributes to this is that from the product images it seems as if they hadn't even molded a bust on Shodo Lilymon, as they already not molded on the Mega House GM series Lilymon figure. What is simply not accurate to the original character design, because Lilymon should have a subtle sized bust that also applies to the representation of her in the anime, as you can see. And even on the action feature figure Lilymon from back then, they molded a subtle sized bust, as you can see, though this action figure was definitely intended to be for children back then. Why this detail and fact gets not taken into account for new figures of Lilymon anymore is a mystery to me, since in contrary and in general so many female anime characters have such overdone size busts, as you know. But new Lilymon figures can't get even a subtle sized one? That's not right and accurate at all. Poor Lilymon. So if that should be really true for Shodo Lilymon, that would be a minus point for Bandai. Well, then everyone has to decide for themselves if they can live with the two bulky arms and legs or not, but she also has many joints for such a small figure and looks very poseable from the product shots. After all, it is also the first slightly larger poseable figure of Lilymon ever, with the best proportions so far, at least partly, and you cannot choose between this Shodo figure and the better figure of Lilymon here, because they don't exist, at least no poseable ones. Then in contrary, it is the case with other Shodo Digimon. And of course, I think Shodo Lilymon looks much better than the action feature Lilymon action figure, with no doubts. And of course, Mega House GM series Lilymon and Mimi are the best choice if you want the perfect figure of Lilymon, but these figures are also in a completely different price category. We are now coming to Shodo Pseudomon. Pseudomon also delivers a very good overall image, of course in terms of the small figure size and the low price, with all the nicely molded details. And as I already mentioned about Lilymon, it is the first better move-able or pose-able official figure of this character with a molding of today's standards and levels ever. So it is the best pose-able figure of Pseudomon at all, where you can't make any comparisons to better ones, because there never was no others, not even an old Digivolving one of him. Yes, but you know that for sure. On Pseudomon, even those big joints are not so obvious, which are a bit too big for the right proportions of the other Shodo Digimon figures, because Pseudomon's original character design is very muscular and beefy. To this, those big joints could be covered up here on the Pseudomon figure better than in contrary it is the case with the others. And for example, the oversized elbow joint balls are optically integrating very well in the general image here, or it can do this better than it is the case with the other Shodo Digimon figures with the more slim body shape. Therefore, the proportions of the Shodo figure fit together quite very well. The paint job and chosen colors are also nothing to sneeze at, as far you can judge this from the product images. And on Pseudomon too, surprisingly many of the important paint apps have been taken into account for such a small figure. The only thing where they saved on Pseudomon a bit are the unpainted claws of his right hand. Otherwise, the other paint apps are there, especially those silver paint apps for the buckles on the leather straps on his left arm, and that also the buckle on the large strap of his back armor, the metal plate on the left upper arm, the cylindrical form details on the back armor, and his Thor hammer are also beautifully painted in the silver. The eyes are also very accurate detailed painted, and the tail is even two-colored. That's why the new Shodo Pseudomon figure looks a lot better than the old action feature Pseudomon action figure of back then. The only thing that I criticize on Pseudomon the most, and which doesn't work well for the overall image, is the size ratio of his Thor hammer compared to Pseudomon himself, because they have extremely overdone the size of the hammer. It should be much smaller if you compare it with Pseudomon's original character design, and as you can see, the hammer should be about the same height and length as his head is, even a bit smaller than his head. And now look again at the size ratio of Shodo Pseudomon's head to his hammer. On the Shodo figure, the hammer is almost larger in height than the head itself in height is, and is also too massive, and on top of that 1.5 times as longer as the head of Pseudomon itself. So there, the size ratio of Pseudomon himself compared to the size of his hammer is not right at all, though the hammer is otherwise very nicely detailed, molded, and looks very good. But a too big Thor hammer looks like they just took it from a larger Pseudomon figure, which of course doesn't exist, and just given this too big hammer to the Shodo figure, and meant, yes, we don't need to make another smaller mold for Shodo Pseudomon's hammer, we just give Shodo Pseudomon the big one here, it fits that way. LOL. But since that was just sarcasm now, but I really wonder why Bandai, why it has to be this big. And since Pseudomon is also one of the characters which would actually be very huge, and that you can't convey this with the rather small Shodo Digimon figure size anyway, as I mentioned it in several times. As I mentioned it several times in these videos before, so it works even less with Shodo Pseudomon, since his oversized hammer makes Pseudomon look even smaller. At least that's how I feel about this. So what do you think about this topic? And excuse me please again. Anyway, I wonder why the hammer could have been even this big in relation to the limited budget that Bandai has for these figures. They even could have saved a lot more material and therefore more costs for an accurately sized hammer and used these savings instead for the missing paint apps for the claws of his left hand. Funny, or how do you see this? Or also for use it for in order to be able to consider even more paint apps on all the other Shodo Digimon figures? And with that, we're coming to the third of Shodo Digimon Wave 3, Omegamon or Omnimon. I can't say anything more about him than the figure. For the simplicity of the Shodo figure series, the small size and the low price just looks very good and could also be quite well proportioned. The fact that almost all paint apps are there is surprising again and really top notch for such a small figure. However, in general it seems anyway as if they had considered more paint apps in the color design of the Wave 2 and 3 Shodo Digimon figures than it is the case with the Wave 1 Shodo Digimon. This is especially noticeable on Wargreymon, where it feels like that the most of the paint apps are missing on him. On Shodo Omegamon, it is especially surprising that even the Digimon symbols or writings on the grey sword blade have got these yellow paint apps. This is really amazing, Bandai, and that for such a small and simpler figure, not even the old, larger D-Real action figure Omegamon from back then has these paint apps for the symbols of the grey sword, though this figure is much bigger. So here too, I take my hat off. Bandai did this really big cinema for such a small figure. Here too, you have such nice details picked out in the silver again, though the color scheme for the most of the rest of the figure is more a pale Bokura no Wargame movie or anime style. The cape looks a bit too short compared to Omegamon himself. Otherwise, for such a small figure, it is really very well made, I think. And those who would have an ultimate well and perfectly molded and painted pose-able figure of Omegamon on the shelf, of course, Bandai Tamashi's Nations D-Arts Omegamon, SH Figure Arts Omegamon Bokura no Wargame version, or the new repaint of him, SH Figure Arts Omegamon Premium Color Edition, are your better choices, for which you of course have to dig much deeper into your pockets. But for the simpler and more affordable Shodo Digimon style, as I said, Shodo Omegamon got also very good and succeeded, and for those people who are okay with this and how he is and do not want or cannot spend that much, this Shodo Omegamon is a very decent smaller alternative. At the end, I have this new group shot for you with all Shodo Digimon figures together. This is again a photo of the real figures and therefore also the first photo of the actual figures of Wave 3 except for Omegamon. What is really obvious here is that Shodo Lilymon is almost larger than all the others, but in the original size ratio she should actually be the smallest of them all. Good for those who might want to have Lilymon single, but with all the others together the general image of them doesn't fit together really well, at least in my opinion. And also the figures which should actually be the largest and the most huge ones are, as a Shodo figure, the smallest ones. But this is probably due to the problem and the compromise that I already mentioned in the last update about Wave 1 and 2, namely that they had to shrink the normal general Shodo figure size for the Digimon and had to make them smaller in general in order to be able to stay in the pricing of the Shodo series. Because the Digimon have more unique, individual, different and extraordinary character designs that in contrast the Dragon Ball Shodo figures have, which generally have always the same body. But since the Digimon are perhaps the ones with the most difficult to make unique designs within the general Shodo figure series, Bandai had to make this compromise. Due to the strange size ratios among the Shodo Digimon, I only wonder why they had to release the Digimon necessarily under the Shodo series. Why not create a separate series for the Digimon to can have more budget to be able to make them even better, larger and more proportioned in size to each other and their original character designs, and sell them for about a bit more than the general Shodo series price is? Wouldn't have been that a better option? So I'm leaving this question in the room now. Yes, and that's my opinion and my pre-thoughts again about the third wave of Shodo Digimon figures. You are welcome to write your own thoughts about them in the comments down below. And again, for the people who will like this figure series very much, and for those the price-performance ratio is alright, I did not want to and would not like to talk bad about those simpler figures, though I actually did that less or almost not here for the third wave. But you should also be realistic here again and see that here too, due to the low budget, they had to make a few compromises, because also here you see where Bandai saved costs. As always, I thank you very much for your attention and see you in the next video. If you liked the info video here, give me a like, and of course you can also subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. For the moment, take care of you, your Mega 88 1000.